So there you go. So I finally figure out how to record this. So hopefully I'll be able to post this later on. I assume that everybody who's not here either haven't woken up yet or something, right? So as usual, just like in the classroom, I'm gonna start right on time. Again, those of I see some of you already figure that you can mute the image, you can mute the video, you can mute the microphone. So at some point, if you may just want to mute it, or like I say, if it gets too noisy, I can mute it all. I mean, I can mute it all. But if you want to say something, you can always just put the mic back on, and I'll be able to hear what you're asking. Or like I say, you can always also write a message on the chat, and I can do that as well. So let me go ahead and start out with some just general announcements. This is going to be the last time we're going to meet before. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
You will see that. Like I say, if you can mute your mic as well if you need to or want to, but you don't have to. But at some point, you may get a little too noisy and I hear each other. So before I go, anyway, so you probably noticed that I already graded your those of you who submitted your photo essays, and I basically graded everything that you've sent so far up until last night. So there's no assignments this week. You are just gonna go on into your spring break next week. Check your email or your announcements periodically. With everything that's going on, you might be able to go anywhere anyway. If you had any big plans to go somewhere for spring break. But so just check your email, your announcements periodically. Again, we're scheduled to come back on April, for us on April the 2nd, which is Thursday. Their regular school is supposed to come back on Monday, which is the 30th. But then on Tuesday is a holiday. It's a Chavez holiday, so we won't have class. I have a feeling, and this is just me. We haven't heard anything official, but it may be that this is the way we're going to go through the rest of the semester.
Actually, Professor?
Yes?
Yeah, they actually sent an announcement, I think yesterday, about how the rest of the semester is going to be, campus will be closed.
Okay.
Yeah, they sent an email.
Who do you get it from?
Southwestern?
The school.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was reading the stuff that actually the president sent something that is official for us anyway. So, but yeah, like I say, I'm not surprised. That's probably what's going to be the case. So I'll double check on that announcement and I'll make sure that everybody knows that that's the case. But like I say, I'll be sending progress as we go through. But it is just, I think we just need to get used to this way to deal with it. So as long as you can handle, I think we've done most of it on Canvas already. So really the biggest adjustment is going to have to adjust ourselves to having classes this way. And, we're all learning. I'm taking a lot of workshops. There's still a lot of features that I don't quite understand. But the more we do this, the better it's going to replicate or simulate whatever we're doing in class. So hopefully it won't be much of a hassle for everybody. So anyway, so as we progress, like I say, we very likely going to go through like this all the way to the end of the semester. So, so a couple of things, like I said, no assignments for this week. If you notice, I also upgraded or those of you who submitted the extra credit assignment that I put out there for those who, for exam number 1, I created a separate column that gives you the points. Again, they're based on the scale, based on the score that you got in the exam. In my better judgment, I allow those of you who were not in class that day to submit something, like you said, when we came back to class. But if you're not gonna come back to class, you're gonna have to find a way for you to maybe send me some pictures of that assignment. But again, it's gonna be difficult to grade stuff that is physical like that, but you can scan it or
Mhm.
yes. Oh, okay. So like, anyway, so so anyway, so like I say, keep up with what's going on. When we get back, very likely on that Thursday, April 2nd, that we're gonna be zooming again. That time I remind, or probably before that, I'll remind people wanted to submit that credit thing. Remember, I'm not gonna give you the same credit as those who submit on time in class that day. That's just the way it goes. Okay, so anyway, and next week, the week after we come back, and again, I'll be as usual. I'll be remind you what's coming up due, and like I say, we've been submitting pretty much everything online in terms of the assignments. To figure out a way to do the exam, I do exams online. Very likely, they are going to be doing the exam online, and I'm going to hear direction from the office as to for people that may not want to do them online. I don't know, but exams can be done online. So the same exam that you've done here, you'll be able to do online. I may have to modify some things, maybe the scoring or so. Obviously, you have an open book situation, but the exams can be timed as well. So even if you may have maybe the exam may be open book, probably gonna have a time limit as to the exam. But again, once we get to that, we're not scheduled for an exam until like late in April. So, but get there, I'll be letting you know how we're going to proceed about the exam. And like I say, I may have to modify some things that are not going to be the same way as to take the exam in class. So, let me show you real briefly. I graded the photo essays. Fantastic. They're really totally the way they were supposed to be done. But there are issues with many of them. And so here's, I'm going to go ahead and put together a list of issues that I guess the main concerns with people on their essay. So remember that you can see your score, and then you can drill in and you can find out, you can see, like I said, I can't show you that because I'm not a student, so I don't have the grade, and I have the general one, but I don't want to show the people's scores. But you can find out comments. There's a rubric, just like the one I told you, you will be able to see getting everything from. In the rubric, there'll be, different points for different components of the essay, and there are usually comments. They'll tell you what happened with your essay. But here are some of the general ones, some of the general issues that I found with the essay. So, can you guys see the screen that I just put right now?
No.
Yes, you can see it, right? So these are the issues with a photo essay. So first of all,
No, you can't see it.
you
I
can't.
can see it. No.
There we go. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, now you can, yeah.
Okay. So the main issue, like I told you, as always, is not following guidelines. If you don't follow the guidelines, you don't do the paragraphs the way it's supposed to be, you're gonna lose points. And most people, like I said, simply following guidelines. How you're supposed to do the paragraphs. Look at the guidelines if you don't remember that. I gave you those hard copies. There are also some posted on Canvas. Follow guidelines. If you just do that, if you just follow guidelines, you're gonna get 30 points. It sounds simple, but some people just don't follow guidelines. The other problem, number two, is that people make up concepts. They come up with concepts, I don't know where. Like I say, sunset is not a concept. It's not a physical geography concept. So look at the list that I gave you. There's a list of concepts for each of the chapters. You see something, you see let's say, somebody wrote a really good essay on wave, which is chapter 20, right? Where we haven't covered it, we probably won't even cover it in class. But you say, okay, so I see waves and look at the list of possible concepts and, find one that fits whatever picture you have, whatever photo you took. And many of you are making up concepts, literally. And many of them, if you just Google something, many of them are not in the context of physical geography. You say this is not physics, this is not chemistry. A lot of things relate to each other, but you have to, and that's why I give you that list. Those concepts have to be physical geography concepts, like the ones that we're using in class. So be very careful with that. Like say, you can use them. Many of you use stuff that we haven't covered yet. Talk about rain, we're going to probably talk about it today. As long as you use the correct concept, it should be okay. Use the textbook. I know many of you are now using the textbook. They're pretty much Google stuff. Most of the time, Google will send you something very general. Most of the time, it may not have anything to do with physical geography. So use the textbook. Now, in a few minutes here, I'm going to give you a link. Publishers, maybe happen in some of your other classes, are making digital versions of the textbook available for free for you guys. So I'm going to the link. I'm going to post it on Canvas as well. I'm going to briefly show you how it works, so you can and then you can actually link to the digital version of the textbook. So even if you don't have a textbook yet, which I don't know how you could do econ or all your assignments, if that is an issue for you, you should be able to get a limit all the way until the end of May, which should be able to cover that you'll be able to get access to the textbook, the digital version of it. I'll put that up in a second here, and there will be a link for you to do that if you want to. Now, the other big issue is number 4, people are not following referencing guidelines. You're not giving me in text citation, they call them, and you can put citation, the parentheses that I show you. You're not showing me that. So I'm not following that. Many people are not giving me bibliography, or sometimes people use the textbooks and they don't put it in the bibliography. Again, look at the list of citation guidelines that I gave you. There's only 5 points, but you are going to lose points if you're not citing stuff. Remember, anytime that you're not using words, you have to tell me where that information comes from. Right verbatim what comes out from the textbook and for the definition of something, but you have to tell me that page that it came from the textbook source. You can use outside sources, but again, they have to be reputable. They have to be related to geography. They cannot just be something you just Google and just throw it in. So be careful with that. And the last thing, very important as well, people are now writing paragraphs. They're giving me 2 sentences. That is not a paragraph. 5 to 6 sentences is considered to be the minimum for a paragraph. So, work your paragraph how you want to do it. Make sure that you give me at least 5 to 6 sentences. I'm going to always hold you responsible for that. You have to give me paragraphs. If it's 2 sentences, 1 sentence, that's not a paragraph. So I'm always going to call you on that. Be careful with that. Any general questions about the photo essays?
No.
Go ahead.
I do have one.
Yes.
Do we have a due date to resubmit the photo essay?
Yes. I'm sorry?
Yeah, can we resubmit the photo essay?
Yeah, I just graded him. I was just saying that. I graded him last night.
Yes, but can we fix it and then send it back to you? Or no?
Well, there will be more. There will be additional photo essays. So I know I remember yours, and I'm not gonna put it in public out there. But like I say, that's an example of what I was talking about, to make sure that the concepts are from the list, and like I said, the picture has to reflect the actual concept, and like I say, you just have to be careful. That's why you want to textbook, right? So
Because
I
I did my
don't
few
have the photo
mistakes.
essays set up for that, but tell you what, because then what's going to happen is I'm going to have to go back and and people are going
Yeah,
to randomly. So just keep that in mind for the next one, right?
for the next one. Okay.
You read the comments, right? So the comments
Yes.
will tell you what the issue was. I think again it has a lot to see with understanding the concept, and that's really the point of this assignment, that you're connecting concepts that we're talking about in class to
Okay.
the real world. So in your case, like I said, I'm not going to say too much about it. Just be careful with the concept, right?
Okay.
A lot of people sometimes are not. A few others that I'm not going to again mention names or anything, but they are putting very general things that, yeah, well, that should be geographical. Well, but if it's not one of those concepts that I'm putting on that list, or if you don't check the textbook, one particular one that that comes to mind, that I mean, I even went back into the textbook and looked at the index, and that particular word that was used as a concept is not even in the textbook. I mean, I refer as that. So again, be careful with that. And the issue here is that if it's something that we haven't covered, you can do that. People, by the way, people have asked me questions about that as well. Can I use concepts that for chapters we haven't covered yet? Totally fine. Yeah, you can do that. The key concepts are not limited here. You're not, like, okay, it's not, I'm not saying, okay, it can only be from 1 through 5, or it can only be from not whatever. You can do anything. Now, if they say, if you send me everything from chapter 1, that could be a problem, right? Because you're only focusing on that chapter. But
Okay.
as we start progressing, you start getting more ideas. Like I said, many of you did rain. We haven't covered rain yet, or precipitation. And so a lot of you will do very well using concepts from that chapter.
Okay.
So I guess the answer is no. I really would not want to give opportunity. Look at the comments that I wrote, and then you should be able to get 30 points next time. Right?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I have a
So
question.
any final questions about the photo essay?
Me, I have a question. For
I don't think we'll have another one until probably another month or so. So anyway,
I have a
yeah, you
question.
want to say something?
Yeah, for my photo essay,
Yeah.
I know how you said that the in-text citation, if I put according to and then the quote, is that an in-text citation?
I'm not sure if I hear you very well. You may want to get closer to the mic.
If I put according to and then the open quotes and then whatever the person said, if I put that in my like as an in-text citation, does that work?
Yeah. So like I say, you can write the exactly verbatim something from the book, right? You can
Oh, okay.
put it in quotes. Like if it's exactly what is coming up from the book, that is okay to do, but it has to be put on quotes, and then you have to cite it. So like say, and the citation goes both ways. So if you get in material from the book, even though it's not exact same words, you still have to cite it, because it's not your ideas, it's not your own thoughts. It's they coming from somebody else. So
Okay.
so now, and I'm not sure if I remember you specifically, and this may not be referred to this, I'm talking about this in general, but sometimes people cut and paste, right? That is technically not okay. So like I say, you can literally just get the actual sentence exactly the way it's in the textbook, put it in quotes, and then as long as it's cited, then it should be okay. That answers the
Okay.
question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so like I say, you can use exact verbatim thing from it. Like, so just be careful not to cut and paste. I'm not saying you are doing that, but if you did, if people are doing that, I'll catch it. I usually know, and especially if you don't give me a citation, it's technically a no. We're getting better. At this time, I think about a fourth of you guys, or maybe more than that, got perfect scores, and people are just getting the guidelines. It's taking a little while to perhaps get familiar with this, and hopefully by the end of the semester we'll get it. We'll get it. purpose course. All right. Okay, so let me move on then to today's topic. Let me go ahead and put that. So we were continuing with atmospheric pressure. We should be able to finish that. And have just the last few slides on that, and then we're gonna move on to atmospheric moisture, which is gonna help us. Let's see. So I think if my memory serves me correctly, we were talking about the subtropical highs. Does anybody sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're talking about the subtropical. All right. Let me see who is. At some point, I'm going to have to take roll to make sure to see who's here. Okay. So we're talking about the subtropical high is a high pressure system. Remember, high pressures are anticyclones, and they spin clockwise. And you can see that those are, again, those are really, they come up from, again, if you hear some noise out there, you can mute your mic. Otherwise, I have to mute everybody. I'm gonna mute all, and if you now, you know, there's also a version where you can always send me questions on the chat, right? Or you can also raise your hand. If you want to really say something or ask something, you can raise your hand, and they can unmute people, and they can talk. But sometimes when too many, I can hear everybody, then it's like everybody is talking in the classroom. So let's see. All right. Okay. So let's see the chat. All right. So so you guys can still hear me? Let me. I guess I'm gonna have to unmute you. So you still hear me, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So and you're still looking at the screen, right? With the subtropical high.
Yeah.
Yes? All right. Okay. So again, this is what when we ended up yesterday. So we're talking about subtropical high, really big system. You can see that they're usually going to be on the west side of continents, right? Remember, subtropical high pressure systems are always going to be dry, because remember that you know, a low pressure system, warm air is going to rise and it's going to create clouds, and that's usually what that's why low pressure systems are the ones that are usually associated with rain, right? And so so usually in areas that have high pressure, like we do, we have one right off of the ocean. The weather is typically going to be clear, warm, and dry. And most of the deserts around the world are usually located right next to subtropical high system. Like I show you pictures on the right of the Sahara Desert in Africa, as well as the Atacama Desert, which is around the coast of Chile between Bolivia, Peru, and anyway, so they're really dry areas. There's really no wind and very little rain, with a few exceptions, of course, you know, but they tend to be where most of the major deserts of the world are located. And I remember we also talked about these are referred to as the horse latitudes, because it comes from the navigation time in the 1600s. Because most cases because there would be no rain, and most people were collecting water from rain in those years, and so they always carry horses with them to you know, when they landed somewhere. That was a more transportation. If there was no water, usually the horses will lose and they will die of thirst, and then they will basically just be thrown overboard. And so when other sailors will come in or the navigators will come in, they will find horses floating on the water, on the ocean. And they usually will refer to those subtropical high areas, around 30 degrees north or south, northern and southern hemisphere. They will refer to as those as the horse latitudes. That's where it comes from. So again, in an exam, if I ask you what which are the horse latitude, one of the choices will be the subtropical high. People confuse again, the subtropical high doesn't mean tropical. Tropical means above the tropics. It's north of the tropics. And the last thing, again, this is also the source of two major wind systems, the westerlies and the trade winds. Remember, sort of right over where you see the pointer right here, like where we are, you have the subtropical high here, and it's spinning clockwise. It's spinning like this. So that spinning, when it gets to the surface, makes the wind come from the west. In our case, the winds are coming, they're moist and they are cool because they're coming from the ocean. And so, but they continue to spin, just like you see with the arrow that I'm pointing right now. They're spinning like this, so we get the winds from the west, but then they continue on like that. And now down here around the tropics, I'd say around Hawaii or so, they're getting the winds coming from the east, right? And we call those they call them trade winds and easterlies. I'm going to talk about those in a second. All right. So this is where we left off last time. Now, we talked briefly about the westerlies, but here are the trade winds. The easterlies, remember that we always refer to, we name a wind based on where they come from, not what they're going. So if they're coming from the west, they're going to be the westerlies. If they're coming from the east, they're going to be the easterlies. Now, the easterlies, like you say, they're part of the subtropical high. They're spinning clockwise. For instance, in the Caribbean, that's what they get the trade winds, or Hawaii gets the trade winds. The winds are coming from the east. Now, here's another thing about this whole thing that comes from the period of navigation, right? Anybody knows why they call them trade winds? If you have your mic on, you can answer. Anybody knows why they call it the trade winds? You can say something, but you have to get your mic off. There you
go. Isn't it the route that the Europeans used to take? Or
yeah, it has to see with that. You're right.
To go
the north and the south.
Yeah. So for instance, if let's look at the map that I have posted right now on the right. Let's say that was Europe, right? So the ships were coming from that area, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say if you're coming out from Spain and you're getting on those ships, remember at that time they moved their ships with wind. So usually they get the westerlies kind of pushing into Europe, but once you get into the ocean, you start moving south, and you can see that the winds are now, the further you go down around the 25 degrees latitude, they now start blowing from the east. And so let's say you're coming from Europe, eventually you're going to pick up these winds right here, the easterly. And those are the ones that are eventually going to take you to the Americas, to the Caribbean, right? So they call it trade winds because at that time, people were trading with America. You were sending products from the from the Americas into Europe, right? And so they became the winds that would facilitate trade. So so you get the trade winds that will take you all the way to the Americas. You can pick up the sugar cane. You can pick up the rum and things that we're sending over to Europe.
They're slaves too.
You just go a little bit north, and the westerlies eventually will take you back to Europe. And so that's why they refer to these as the trade winds. Now, again, they're coming from the east on the northern hemisphere. But we start going to the southern hemisphere, and the same thing happens. So that those westerlies, we usually, like say if you wanted to go down to Africa, a lot of the Europeans would do that. They will bring you down into, the westerly will take you to Africa, but then the easterly will take you back up to Europe. So, and particularly the trade winds, the easterlies are very reliable. They always blow in that direction. So they tend to be very reliable. And so they became the winds that navigators at that time were relying on to bring them to facilitate the trade between the Americas and Europe. And they're very reliable, and they tend to be pretty much there all the time. They're never going to switch. You're going to find out the westerlies switch. We'll see what happens here in the West Coast, that sometimes the westerlies come in, but that's not the case for the easterlies. They're always reliable. All right. And you have seen, I have also updated the notes for this for chapter 5. I think I put them on the module 7. You can see those, but I modified. So you can actually see they look pretty much the same in color as these right here, or the PowerPoints. All right, so moving on. The trade winds also, the other thing that happens is they usually dry and warm, and they tend to be very moist because they come in most cases through water. What you see is that they are not going to produce rain unless they are forced to rise. And we briefly talk about how one of the ways that we can, we talk about, for instance, the windward effect, that is one of the ways that we can impact the temperature of places. And so in Hawaii, for instance, it's going to be very rainy on the windward side, see on the map. And they usually get the trade winds, the winds that are coming from the east. Now, what you'll see in the Pacific, for instance, and all through the South Pacific, in the tropical regions of the Pacific, and that happens in the Caribbean as well. If the islands do not have mountains, they're going to be dry. They're not going to be any people living in there, because islands that have a mountain, they're going to have fresh water, because the air, in this case the easterlies, the trade winds are going to be forced to rise, and we're going to find in the next chapter that we require warm air to rise up to a certain temperature to eventually create clouds and then eventually rain. So islands that do not have mountains are usually going to be dry. There's not going to be any people living in it because people need water to drink. So, but usually again on the windward side, where the wind is coming from, it's going to be very rainy, like you see in the picture here of the island of Hawaii, the big island. But on the rain shadow, which is the opposite side, they also call it the leeward side, is dry. It's like you see in Hawaii. Hilo, 150 inches of rain a year. Puako, which is on the leeward side, 9 inches of rain. So very, very different. And simply because on the windward side, the air is forced to rise, creating rain. And again, some of the very wet places in the world are going to be on the windward side of these winds. You guys see that? Okay. Let's see. I lost the chat over here. Where is my chat? Oh, there's the chat. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me move on to the next one. So the westerlies, again, these are the winds that we get here. These are the ones that we get here on the West Coast, right? They come in, again, they're part of these Hadley cells, subtropical hyacinth right out in the ocean. Now, some of these winds also are geostropic. They are in the higher levels of the atmosphere, but by the time they come down to the surface, we get what we usually get. We usually get them coming from the west. Now, these are not as reliable as the easterlies. What I mean by that is that not necessarily always come from the west, right? Things change sometimes. When we get rain, when we get low pressure systems, in fact, sometimes we pick up moisture from the south. from, you know, further down, let's say down towards La Paz, Baja California, or even inland, because low pressure systems are going to flow in the opposite direction. And now sometimes we have low pressure systems that are coming from the north, like the ones we're getting right now, really, really cold. And the winds are not necessarily coming from the west, they're coming from the east. And we'll see towards the end of the chapter that sometimes there's specific situations, like with the Santa Ana condition, where the winds fully come from the east rather than from the west. So they tend to be a little less consistent and less persistent than the easterlies. They're not as reliable. And of
I
course,
have a question.
go ahead, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the Santa Ana winds, why are they so dry? Is it because they come from the east?
Okay, hang on to that question, because at the end, I'm going to talk about what they call modifications of this.
Okay, thank you.
It has to see what we just said, because the subtropical high actually moves further inland. Instead of being on the ocean, it moves out towards, say, the deserts.
To the mountain, huh?
Colorado, Arizona. And so, I mean, they're still going to be spinning because it's a high pressure system. They're still going to be spinning clockwise, right? But if they're not in the ocean anymore, now we actually get like what would be the easterlies. That's the ones that we're going to start getting. They're still going to be spinning the same way, right? So
Okay.
let me show you the pointer over here. They're spinning right over here, right? So that the subtropical high is spinning like this.
Okay.
And so when they're in the ocean, the winds are coming from the west. But let's say during Santa Ana, they move over here. So they're no longer in the ocean, they're now here. They're still
inland now. Mm-hmm.
But now we start getting these winds like that. We get the ones that are coming from the east. They tend to be
Okay.
and hot because they're coming from the desert. So like I said, I'll get to that towards the end of that. We'll see some of those movies.
Okay. Thank you.
For instance, that's why sometimes they're not reliable, because they move around. And so like say with the Santa Anas, for instance, they go into the desert, they come through the canyons. That's where they get the name. They come to the canyons and they speed up. So some of these easterlies, they come in from the desert, are going to be really, real fast, almost just tropic. I think last time we had some Santa Anas, they were clocking some winds at 115, almost cyclonic, almost like a hurricane, the speeds of some of these winds. So they're very reliable, and then different things at the surface, topographic barriers, things like that are going to modify the direction, and then they can be very erratic. They can be going in different places. Right? Like I say, well, I'll talk about those in a second. Okay. And then we pretty much move on to the higher latitudes. I remember that when I show you those seven, I show you, I think in 5-6 slides before, that there are 7 main systems around. The main one is what we refer to as the Hadley Cell. But then you go up north of that, north of the subtropical high, around 60 degrees, 50 degrees, we have another low pressure system. They call those the subpolar lows. And the same thing is happening, right? So if it's a low pressure system, it's going to be counterclockwise. So the winds are now, they're flowing counterclockwise as opposed to clockwise. And so what's happening here, like these are the winds that like Seattle, Portland will get, they're very rainy because, and at the same time, they're also right at the boundary between the really cold Arctic air that you have up in the polar regions around the Arctic region, but you still have somewhat relatively warmer winds that are coming from the lower latitudes. And so they tend to be, anytime you have this conflict between, which is again what happens why we have rain here in the winter, you have cold fronts coming from the north, warmer coming from the south, and that usually creates rain. And so those areas are very rainy. They happen to be low pressure systems, and they happen to be, you know, where those boundaries between really cold and really warm or warmer are happening, right? So you get a rising air. Remember that warmer air, again, it's relative. At that area, the air is not that warm. It's not tropical by any means, right? But the air is definitely warmer than the air around it. So anytime that happens, the air is going to rise. And when it rises, it's going to create clouds and increase the possibilities of rain. Now, some of these storms move south in the winter. And that's why we get rain in the winter here. These are the jet stream pushes a lot of these polar lows that are usually around 60 degrees north, bring them down to our area. And so the jet stream moves south. Jet stream, remember, is a geostrophic wind. It's winds that you find in the higher levels of the atmosphere. And so in the winter, chapter 7, we talk about all this stuff. These fronts move south, pushed by the jet stream, and they encounter winds that are coming from the tropical regions, which are very warm. And so the collision of those two is going to create lots of rain, and sometimes a lot of rain like we've been having the last few days. And that's why we get the rain here in the winter. We don't get it as much in summer. In the summer, we have monsoon type of patterns where the wind is actually comes from the south, and they pick up moisture from the Gulf of California and the southern part of the Pacific. And so sometimes in the summer, we're going to get some rain that way. But the desert, sometimes we get rain that way as well. Right? So that's the subpolar lows. That's, if you remember when I showed you those 7 main systems, I think there's a picture that I reviewed that very quickly. Okay. So now, the next one is we're gonna go into the polar regions. So once we get to the low pressure system in the jet stream, then we go up to, keep going north towards the polar regions. So here's again, here's another way you can see these patterns of circulation. So we're gonna get up to the polar highs, and you can see how they're broken down up here. Starts out with the ITCZ, the highly cells are out, very wet, lots of cloudiness, because again, that's a low pressure system area, constantly hot, basically every day it's pretty much raining. And then we get out to the subtropical highs. Again, you can see the winds, you can see the westerlies up on top when I'm pointing in the arrow right now. Easterlies in the south, they're flowing in a clockwise direction. You get up to the one that I was just talking about, the polar fronts. That's another low pressure system, counterclockwise movement of the winds. You can see them out there, those arrows like that, right? And then it gets all the way up to the polar high. Polar high, again, is going to be very cold. And again, they're a typical a typical high pressure system. The air is sinking, extremely, really cold air sinking down. And then it creates, once it starts getting to the surface, it begins to spin clockwise. So right at the polar regions, you're going to have very, very, in many cases, many winds, but it's also both the Arctic out in the northern hemisphere or the Antarctic in the southern hemisphere are going to be some of the driest places in the world. You know, people think, well, there's snow up there, there's ice. Well, it's ice, but it's very, very, very dry. Some of the very, very, very dry areas of the world. Now, those winds are going to be a lot faster in the Antarctica, down in the southern hemisphere, down here, when I'm putting the arrow right now, because there's hardly any land down there. It's mostly water. And so, I don't know if you know some of the expeditions of Magallanes, Magellan, and all this guy. These areas right here have extremely, really, really fast winds. They're very difficult to navigate. When Magellan tried to go around to try to find a way from the east, coming from Europe, going into the other side like that, and he tried to go through here, he had to do it like 5 times because the ship would get, lost and stuff like that. So yeah, but now we have them in the north as well. Very strong winds up there, but they usually get shifted, and that's again, those are the ones that bring the storm down towards our side, because we have land, and the land that we have up in the northern hemisphere is going to slow or shift and move around the wind. So while there's still a lot of winds, they tend to be not as fast, not as strong, because we have more land that interferes with that movement. And there we also get with the polar easterlies. Again, so we have in the polar high, we have again the same clockwise movement that we see up here. So winds moving in that direction, but then when they're coming down, you have winds that are coming from the east. They call it the polar easterly. They tend to be extremely cold in the eastern part of Canada and the eastern part of the United States. In fact, this time of the year, they actually bring polar Arctic type of temperatures. That's where you get really, really freezes, really deep freezes. Sometimes they call those the polar vortexes. And when they move down really, really low, say toward New York, and sometimes even down towards Washington, D.C. and stuff like that, they tend to bring extremely, extremely cold weather. In fact, a lot of those polar vortexes a lot of times happen around this time of the year. And remember when we're talking about temperature, we just barely, this is in many cases sometimes the coldest time of the year, because we've been going through the entire winter, and now the land has gotten really cold, the water has gotten colder, and you know, so we basically takes a little bit of time for the entire season. So some cases we're going to get the coldest temperatures right around this time of the year, and both in the East Coast and the West Coast. And for us, it means rain. It's not unusual to have this March rain because of that situation. All right. So again, these winds that are moving up in those high levels of the atmosphere, coming from the polar highs, they're diverging, they're moving around. They tend to be very cold and very, very dry. All right. Anybody discover the feature that you can raise your hand? I think it's right around the chat area. You can look if you really want to raise your hand. Down at the bottom, you see a little feature that.
Bottom, can't see it.
You see it?
No, but it's fine. I can just I can speak up. It's fine. Thank you.
Some little features down there. So you see, well, you may not see those because I think that's where I can mute everybody or not. But so sometimes it will say yes or no. If you click where you see all the participants, and the feature that says more, you hit that more, and you're gonna see you can put your thumbs up, thumbs down. You can even clap, or you can just raise your hand.
Oh, so, I see it now. Okay, thank you.
So sometimes if you're like, I'm looking right now at the chat, so sometimes if I mute everybody, I haven't done that right now because you can still talk, but you can sometimes use that. And you know, we'll get more used to it. Looks like we're going to be doing this through the rest of the semester. So I think by the time the semester ends, we're going to be experts. I think from now, we're probably going to be taking online classes. Huh? Anyway, similar to us being in the classroom. All right, so and this is very quickly, I've been talking a lot about this already. Up in the upper levels of the atmosphere, we have, usually we call those jet streams. We have the anti-trade, basically the opposite of the trade winds. They flow easterly, but they're up in the atmosphere. You can see them. You see them there. You see the polar jet stream right up on top, and that's the one that brings us rain because it moves south. That polar jet stream sometimes moves south, brings all this cold moisture from the north, or the cold Arctic type of cold fronts. That's what they call them, and then they clash with the subtropical jet stream that is found usually around the tropical region. When the two collide, it brings us the rain in the winter. So jet streams again, they usually going to be gone. You can see them, most of them flow from west to east around in our latitude, the opposite in the southern hemisphere. But these are also the ones that give you turbulence on a plane, especially if you're going against them. They're always going to be floating from west to east. But again, these are we don't feel those at the surface. They are way up in the high levels. I mean, sort of where planes fly. That's where those winds are at. So again, one of the questions I'm asking in the exam, which is an example of the, again, they also call geostrophic winds. Those are the ones that they go up in the higher level. Let's see where's my. All right, so let me. Okay. So these are some of the modifications of the circulation patterns that we've been going over. There are changes that happen, and they usually have some consequences for in different parts of the world. But remember, those are the 7 components that I talked about earlier. How usually air moves around the world. And I've just been going over those in a few days. But sometimes things change. And one of the big ones is, for instance, we have variations. And again, they're going to be both happening differently, and then whether you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. So one of them is what they call the monsoon changes. And what happens is that the ITCZ usually is right around the equator, if you remember that, right? I'm showing that on the picture on the right, on the map. They usually sit right around the equator, the ITCZ, right? But in the northern hemisphere, in July, in our summer, it actually moves about 25 degrees north. And so if you can see that around India, around Southeast Asia, that's where it has a big impact, because I'm going to show you that in a second here, that ITCZ is now creating a lot of rain, like it usually does in the equatorial region. And so in July, in our summers, around India, around Southeast Asia, Pakistan, all that area, that ITCZ moves way up there. In the southern hemisphere, in their summer, around January, it moves about 20 degrees south. So that ITCZ is going to have a big impact around these areas of Africa, Mozambique, all that, and the northern part of Australia, and bringing torrential rains in January in the southern hemisphere, July in the northern hemisphere. So the shifts, again, this just a few degrees, degrees, 25 degrees. Well, it goes from 1 to 20 or 1 to 25, right? Those are going to impact the weather that we find in the latitudes. So basically what's going to happen is the weather that we usually have in the tropics around the equatorial region, heavy rain, basically every day, it gets shifted north or south based on whether you are, usually in the summer, right? Either in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. And notice that it only happens right around this area of the world. You don't have much effects of that, or say in our area. We don't see those monsoonal conditions, say in, there's a little bit of that in South America because the winds flow a little bit different down there. But most of the impacts is going to be right around this area right here, around the Indian Ocean area that impacts also Africa and Australia, and of course for sure India and Southeast Asia. Ready to see that? So the result of that, what actually happens is has a big impact in India. Those are called monsoons.
Monsoons.
What happens is actually, and here's an explanation of that. In the winter in India, the winds come from the north, right? They come in. So here's what the Himalayas. Here's Siberia up in the north from near Russia, and Tibetan Plateau, which is a very high plateau, is very, very cold up there. So in the winter, right, the ITC, remember, is way down to the equator. They get winds that come out. The winds that come out from the north. They're very dry and not a lot of rain. In the summer, however, like you see on the top screen right over here, as the ITC moves north, it begins to push up the winds towards India, right? So it picks up a lot of moisture from the Indian Ocean. All that moisture gets picked up and gets taken right into India. Right? And so all that moisture that gets picked up eventually gets dropped and makes it very, very rainy. And we call that the monsoon season. Again, in the winter is the opposite. In the winter, we have what is called the Siberian high, brings cool dry air towards India, and so it's basically almost no rain, very, very dry. So now in India, they rely on this monsoon to basically to grow crops year round. If the monsoon season is not doesn't bring a lot of water, in the all day now they have irrigation and they have different more modern ways to contain all the water that rains. But in the years past, if the monsoon wasn't that good, there would be massive starvation. Millions of people would die in India because they just didn't have enough rain in the monsoon. Now, I mean, that can still happen today. When the monsoon is not very, very wet, they're gonna have problems raising crops. The yields are gonna be real low, and there will be starvation in some areas. In very poor areas of India, the people will actually die of starvation. But now with the irrigation system, that is not as doesn't happen as much. What they do see, however, everybody got that the main idea, right? So I can ask you a question on an exam, you know, what would happen in a monsoon? You know, it's like you say something, you know, which of these is the one that either in the summer or the winter where it's going to bring a lot of rain into India? And you know, there's going to be in the summer, the monsoon for the summer. But so the other thing that happened, like you say, it happens a lot in Southeast Asia, and like I say, in Australia. That's usually where the most pronounced effects of that happen. But one of the biggest things that happen is that it's torrential rain, floods. When we have the monsoon season, I have some of the most recent pictures of the monsoon that we had last year. I mean, like you see there, it's not unusual. It's sort of like when it rains, it really pours. It really pours down very, very hard in there. Oops, sorry. So again, if they don't get that rain in the summer, they're going to give them a lot of problems in terms of food production. Let me put that. Let me put this video real quick over here. So this is again from the last monsoon season. There you go. Here. It just gives you an idea so you can see a picture of what.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, India's primetime destination. Let's bring you the 9 headlines at 9 tonight. Over 20 people dead after a wall collapses in Mumbai's Malad area. Heavy rains expose the city's creaking infrastructure once again. Mumbai finds itself a city underwater tonight. Big relief to Vijay Mallya. UK High Court allows the fugitive liquor baron to appeal against his...
But it gives you an idea that the rains are pretty heavy. And it's not unusual. People die from this as well. Places like Bangladesh, which is right around this area, because they're so low to the ground, they're kind of like New Orleans. They're very close to the ocean, very low, closer to the sea level. Many places, and increasingly, the rains are heavier now, and people lose their homes. They have to move. They have to migrate back to India or some other places because they lose their homes. And heavy flooding, a lot of people die. So the other modification is the Santa Ana winds that we were talking about earlier. So here's what happens. So again, usually the high pressure system sits out here, right in this area, right in the ocean. But in these conditions, when we have Santa Anas, you see the high pressure moving right towards the desert. It moves with what they call the Great Basin, which is sort of between parts of California, Arizona, Nevada. So it moves. So again, remember the winds are continuing to move the same way they do over the ocean. They're still moving on an anticyclonic pattern. They're moving again clockwise. You can see them like that. So when this high pressure is in the ocean, the winds are coming from the west. When it moves inland, like you see here, now the winds come out from the east, right? And that's what we get in Santa Ana conditions. That's why, like you were asking earlier, Petra, they're dry, and they're in many cases very, very warm. Now, they get the Santa Ana name because there are a lot of canyons up in that area. And there are canyons here too. And we get a lot of those canyons in San Diego in the mountains. And so when the winds are coming really fast in a high pressure system that move inland, they go through the canyons and they speed up, right? Remember that they're already coming in very, very, very dry. But as they go through those canyons, sometimes they can reach up to 40, 60. Like I said, last Santa Ana that we had around September, October, which is usually when they come. Most of them, there's some that come later, there's some that come a little earlier, but usually I would say sometime between at the end of summer, September, October, sometimes even in November, we get a lot of Santa Ana's conditions. Again, remember, it's starting to get cold around that time, but all of a sudden you get these really dry spell, right? You also see that there's no, in September, for instance, the fog stops because the winds are not coming from the east, they're not coming from the ocean. And so, again, that's also the time of the year. We had just gone through the summer. All the vegetation with the rain that we had in the winter, all that vegetation has dried out. It has dried out and it's very, very dry. Any little spark will cause a fire. And that's why it's also the season that we get a lot of a lot of fires. We get a lot of wildfire conditions because again we had all this really dry vegetation that basically any little spark. In many cases, it's just like even the light, the cables, you know, that are carrying all the power lines, simply rubbing against each other causes sparks. And it can create fires. And sometimes it's lightning. We have lightning going on in some of those areas. They're gonna have really devastating fires. Showing you a picture over here. I think it was 2007, I think it was. I know I wasn't living here then, and I came here because I was working a program that we brought kids to visit colleges. And these are fire. You can see the fire burning all over Southern California, but you can see that the winds are coming from the east and they're blowing all the smoke towards the ocean. And you can definitely see, I mean, there were so many fires that that they were causing all these problems. You can see it. You can see the pattern of the wind. So again, usually late summer, early fall, you're gonna get wildfires because the conditions are so dry, and some of these winds they can blow very, very, very fast. That can create ideal conditions for fire. Very good with the Santa Anas?
Yes, thank you.
People still have their mics on. Anyway, the last thing we're going to talk about, so and hopefully start a little bit on moisture, El Nino. Right? The official name of El Nino, Southern Oscillation, El Nino Southern Oscillation, ENSO. So I can probably put a question and what is the technical official name of the El Nino thing. It's just ENSO. It's El Nino Southern Oscillation. Now here's what happens. With El Nino, we have not normal. We call that an anomaly. Is a change of the patterns of warming in the eastern equatorial Pacific. As you see on the map, on the two maps on the right over here in the middle, you see what happens is when we have these El Nino conditions, the ocean around this area of the world gets hotter than normal. It usually happens about every 7 to 8 years. So the waters along the west coast of South America get warmer than normal. Now, fish usually likes cold, and they like the colder water because they usually have a lot of nutrients that they can munch on. Fish usually go very deep to get that stuff because that's where the water is colder, right? And so there's a lot of fishing that goes on, say, right off the coast of Peru. Sometimes people are surprised that there's so much fishing going on in Peru, is because they have some really deep waters there because they have trenches caused by plate tectonics, and fish love it. Fish go down there, they can get all these nutrients, and they can munch around, and so fishermen go out there and fish. Well, when this El Nino phenomena happens, the water get they get normally higher than normal, right? And when that happens, the fish move out. They go somewhere else where the water is still cold. And so they're no longer going to be around here. And so the fishing gets really, really bad when that happens. And so again, it happens about every 3 to 7 years. It usually goes on for about a year or so. A lot of changes happen in terms of the pressure system. You know, usually the subtropical high system are here. Things get changed in terms of that. Remember that pressure, atmospheric pressure, is caused by changes in heating. And so all that basically changed everything around. And so what's going to happen, the areas on the West Coast, when we have an El Nino year, are going to get very, very rainy. I'll show you some pictures in a second here of flooding conditions, you know, they usually happen in an El Nino year. Now, does anybody know why they call it El Nino? Where did the name come from? Anybody caught that in your reading? You can put it in the chat too if you want. You know, anybody knows?
I read it, but I can't remember now.
Let's see, where is my chat? Anyway, well, what happened when El Nino, it was basically discovered by the Peruvians. Right? So again, Peruvians are over here. They're big fisher people. They go out and fish. And they found out that, you know, about every 7 years or so, the fishes were not good. There was no biting. Now, they discover that usually around December, and that's their summer down there. That's
okay. Now it's yeah.
So they basically say, you know, El Niño Jesús, right? Baby Jesus.
Baby Jesus, they relate that to baby Jesus, yeah.
Exactly, to Christmas, right? To baby Jesus.
Christmas, around that time, yeah.
Yeah. So they basically say, yeah, the baby Jesus wasn't good to us this year. Good. It wasn't a really good thing when that happened, right? But they basically kept talking about, yeah, Niño Jesús wasn't good to us this year. And so it just began to build into being El Nino. Scientists noticed it and began to study, well, why is it that every 7 years or so, it's get warmer? And so that's when they discover, I'm not going to give you a lot of details of all the science that happen behind it. They have the Walker patterns that are changing, all that. The bottom line is that the temperatures get hotter in this area. Now, in the western side of continents, they get a lot of rain. So all South America, we get a lot of rain in this area. During an El Niño year, you can see that on the red there. And on the other side of the world, so let's say in the western part of the Pacific, or on the east part, or around, like say Brazil, those areas, Indonesia, in the Pacific, they actually get droughts. They get heavy droughts, and so it's basically the opposite of what happens to us. And so again, the El Nino year usually brings a lot of rain, and the coast usually on the western side of the continent. Show you some really cool some pictures over here. So again, on the opposite side, Indonesia, Australia, they get droughts. Opposite of what we get. Let me show you with an El Nino year in '86. And
with the storms itself, it was a classic Pineapple Express sort of system that brought a series of 3 storms into Northern California from February 11th to the 20th, with the jet stream all the way from Honolulu coming into Northern California, and it was a series of 3 storms. On the 11th, the first one was coming our way. It brought modest to pretty good amounts of rain. It kind of ramped up on the 11th, and then there was a break on the 13th. But hot on the heels was the next storm, wrapping up here in the Pacific, so that by the 15th, 15th and 16th, the rain was heavy again. And behind that, one more big storm was getting ready. You can see the moisture from Northern California all the way down to the Hawaiian Islands. That brought really heavy rain. The last storm was the biggest by far. And let me show you just how much rain we had. These are the storm totals. Sacramento had over 9 inches of rain. On the west slope, Grass Valley had 22 inches of rain, and at Blue Canyon, almost 3 feet of rain in just 10 days. Well, those are the numbers, but it really is the pictures that tell the story of this storm. The 10 days of rain brought enormous amounts of water down the west slope of the Sierra. The flow on the American River tested the flood control capacity of Folsom Dam to its limit. As the storm ramped up, outflows were increased into the lower American, but the lake kept rising. And 20 miles upstream, the situation became more dire. At the site of the never-completed Auburn Dam, an earthen coffer dam gave way. This sent a surge of 180,000 acre-feet downstream into Folsom Lake. Now that's about 20% of the total capacity of the lake. The sudden increase pushed Folsom Lake over its design capacity for the only time in its history. The dam was doing its job of acting as a buffer for downstream communities, but the outflow from Folsom sent the American high onto the levees, which held. Just to the north, Lake Oroville was also being tested. Inflows were the highest since it was built, and the lake was nearing capacity. The outflows from the dam were 150,000 cubic feet per second. That's the maximum for 2 full days. Here, too, the dam was doing its part as acting as a buffer for downstream communities from the high water. The levees on the Feather River were being tested, and on February 20th, at about 6 p.m., a levee failed. The towns of Linda and Olivehurst were flooded as the water covered 30 square miles. The water was as much as 10 feet deep. Only rooftops were visible. 3,000 homes went underwater, and of those, almost 900 were destroyed. The Peachtree Mall went underwater. In the valley, water was everywhere. All of the weirs on the Sacramento River were flowing into the Yolo bypass, which was running near full. In Sacramento, the river was passing just a few feet under the Tower Bridge. Discovery Park and the bike trail were underwater. Water managers were running out of places to put water and feared what would happen if there was another storm coming.
Folsom Dam is still critical. Shasta is, we're looking at that as critical.
The rain ended, but high water continued to impact the valley. At one point, I-5 and Highway 99 south of Sacramento were closed due to flooding. At the same time, I-80 and Highway 50 were closed due to rock and mudslides,
resulting in closure of the freeway. Also, 99 South is closed. In essence, everyone that's north of this area is stuck in Sacramento because eastbound 80 is also closed, and all the connecting county roads, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a real problem here, as you can see.
A levee also gave way on the McCullum River.
As you can see very plainly, we have 2 very large breaks in the levee on the east side of the island along the McCullum River, the north fork of the McCullum, and water is just coursing, surging onto Tyler Island right now.
Flooding Walnut Grove and Thornton. In Sacramento County, Arcade Creek flooded. Hundreds were evacuated on short notice and were sheltered at the gym at Grant High. Now, the impact of that storm is still being felt today. The new spillway at Folsom Dam is a direct result of that storm. It's been 30 years in the making, but next year, when this is completed, it will allow water managers to prevent what happened in 1986.
It's just incredible when you look at those pictures, the water so high up to the roofs on those homes. Yeah. When you look back to 1986, did this happen as a result of an El Nino year?
You know, a lot of people look at pictures like that, and that's kind of what they think of from El Nino. 1986 was not an El Nino year. This is similar to what happened in 1997, also not an El Nino year. This can happen in any year, and that's the scary part about living in Northern California. We can go from a drought to pictures like we've been showing you in any season.
Anyway, so one of the things that is happening right now is that because of global warming that we've been talking about, this is happening often now. In fact, many people are not saying that these whole patterns are becoming normal now. Remember, it's always used to be an anomaly, but it's becoming more and more. These places are getting warmer and warmer. So it would be very likely to see almost like El Nino type of pattern on a more regular basis, which, you know, for many of us here, for instance, in the West Coast, it'd be good because it'd be wet. Again, it's so not anyway, you guys, I was taking raw while you guys watching the video. There's one person here that I don't see the name. It just says iPhone iPhone 5, this iPad 5. You know, anybody knows who that person might be? You can send me the chat. So
Yeah, I'll fix it.
was that?
I'll fix it. Give me 1 second.
No, but just who are you?
Alejandra.
Alejandra. Okay, yeah. So I can give you credit, right? So for attendance. So anyway, but I think that's the only one that I saw. Sometimes people can put like Annette's phone or Gracia's phone. You know, you can do that, but so I don't know. I wonder if there's actually 5 people that just have iPad. If you just have iPad, I don't know who you are. So because I'm looking at the participants here. Let's see. Anybody else that has that? Because I see. I tell you who I don't see here. I don't see Celia Dominguez. I don't see Joshua. So if you're one of those anonymous iPad or iPhone.
Okay, can you see me? I have an iPad too.
No, I have yours.
That I use sometimes. I don't know how you can.
Yeah, so I don't know how to do it neither because I don't have an iPhone. But I think you can name it. So if you haven't named your phone yet, you may have to do a check on that later on. So Alejandra just did it. Maybe you can say real quickly how you do it, Alejandra, because I don't have an iPhone. I don't.
Here I just go on participants and I click on mine and then
Change it then. Okay, you can do that. So like I say, it only matters for those who. I think that was the only one that I saw that it's sort of anonymous. Everybody else, I can see your name, and some of you just put like you know, phone or the other people just put their iPhone, but Annette's iPhone, that kind of thing. Anyway, those are the ones that I have in terms of people who attended today. All right. Okay. So that was El Nino. Now, so here basically again what happened. I'm not going to go too much to it. Is again, it just basically changes. The main thing we need to know about that it changes the patterns in the Pacific. They call that Walker circulation. That basically changes the way water moves around from the south to the north to the south, and always circulating that way. But it's also moving from the surface to the bottom. And so when we have this El Nino pattern, what they call the thermocline, the water basically is just too warm, even way down at the bottom, where usually water is relatively cold, that allows for those microorganisms to grow, the fish like, it becomes warmer than normal. So all these things get messed up, basically. Now, the last thing is we also have what they call La Niña, which is basically the opposite of El Nino. Instead of getting the waters of the Pacific getting abnormally warm, they get abnormally cold. And so again, the opposite things that happen in the La Niña year, they're usually very dry for the West Coast, for us, for instance. But then it would be really rainy in the coast of Brazil and Indonesia, will be warmer and lots of rain in those areas. So La Niña is basically the opposite than El Nino is. And it's just basically, as much as we want to know, the same patterns, except again, that they become opposite. And ladies and gentlemen, we have now finished chapter 5. So we have about less than 5 minutes. Let me just do a very quick introduction to chapter 6. I already posted the slides for that. And you can look at those, but obviously we're not gonna basically do much with it. I just want to give you a very quick introduction of chapter 6 with this atmospheric moisture. So again, very likely this is the way we're going to be meeting from now on. I'll send all the official info in the next few days. But you know, basically, anyway, let me you know what, it may not even be worth it to just get started. So anyway, so I think I'm just going to end it right here. We'll start chapter 6. And we are behind you guys. These are different times. Let me see if I can find where my switch. I'm trying to find where my settings are. Lost it. I wanted to put my face again, but I can't find it. I lost my face. Because you guys still seeing that blind screen out there, right?
Yes. Well,
Okay, there it is. Yeah. Okay, so let me put my again. Okay, so you see my face now, and I'm looking up, but
Yeah, we see.
you see me
we
now.
still do. Yes.
So anyway, so like I say, we're just gonna end it right here. I'm not gonna start chapter 6. There's no point. But so keep track of your emails and all of that. Like I say, it's very likely that this is how we're gonna continue through the rest of the semester. Things that are not ideal. There's a lot of learning curves for all of us. We're gonna try and do the best that we can with this situation. We hope that we able to make sure that you finish your semester. I mean, none of us planned for this. And we'll do the best. I mean, I think from what I've seen so far, I think you guys are going to be okay with this. We're all learning different features and how to do different things. I'm learning as well. I'm still taking a lot of workshops. If you have a chance, try to get some workshops maybe before the beginning of the spring break. Just so you know, every time I go to one of these workshops, I learn a new feature. I learn something new. Again, I'm recording this now, and so I now have to figure how to post it up into Blackboard, into a Canvas. So hopefully we'll have a record of what went on today. The most important thing, you guys, let's stay safe. All right, this coronavirus thing is not a joke. It's very, very serious. I wish that our public officials would have taken it more seriously earlier, but you know, if you've been following this on all this stuff, I can probably put a link. I mean, it's more like I teach cultural geography too, and it's totally into that realm. But this whole thing is global, widespread. And unfortunately, I think here in the United States, we have not seen the worst of it yet. All the stuff that you hear about China and about Italy, we're hitting there. And I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think that we are ready to handle what is coming up. When people start dying, when people start having to go to hospitals, we may not even have enough capacity. So the best thing we can do individually is to, you know, to follow, you know, what the governor is saying, stuff like that, not to go into places where there's a lot of people. At some point, like they're doing in some states already, or some cities, like in the Bay Area already, they don't let you go out. You know, they have a very restricted.
They have a curfews. Yeah.
Curfews. You cannot be out at certain times and stuff.
In Puerto Rico, they had one since last week because we have family there, and they have curfews now from like 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. is the latest that people can be out.
So we're not there yet, you guys, but I think that's.
But we will probably.
So we're gonna have to be careful. You know, if you do go out, like I say, make sure that, you know, there's all these a lot of exaggeration about, you know, buying as much toilet paper as you need. You know, some of those things they're real. Yeah, let's try to be prepared. But you know, this could go all the way until the summer. But I mean, stores are going to be open, and so not going to make you any good to. In some cases, with this hoarding that people are doing, you're preventing other people, and particularly the most vulnerable. That's why I'm glad that some stores are allowing elderly people.
Yes, I'm loving that.
Yeah, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My parents are old. I have my dad 86. He's going to be 86. My mom is 80. So I'm really concerned. And my brothers and sisters that live down in the valley, we are watching to make sure that they are protected. And you need to do the same with your relatives, with your elderly relatives, your parents, your grandparents. And, you know, like say, follow those simple rules. Wash your hands. Anytime you touch a surface, if you're out there, wipe it out, because from what we know about this disease is that it stays in some of the surfaces. You touch them,
very contagious. Yeah.
it can give you some problems. So let's be safe, guys. As much as possible, try to enjoy these days off. Like I said, we'll catch up. There's nothing due. You can always, of course, do some work if you're gonna be indoors. Not gonna be
read.
Catch up in your key concepts. I've updated all that stuff. I am going to be putting a link to show you so you can go in, and I'm probably going to send you an announcement. It's probably easier to do it that way, so you can go and get a free copy, a digital edition of this textbook. Okay, so those of you who may not have the textbook yet, or you just want to get that anyway, you can do that. All right. I can show you real quick if you, but let's see. Let me find it real quick. But I'm just gonna post. I'm gonna post the link so you can see. I know we're running out of time here. Let me show you real quick. Okay, where you go? I'll get you out of here, guys. Okay, so I am going to send you this link over here. If you see it yet. Okay. You see the screen now?
Yes.
It says Rachel. Okay, so that's the link I'm going to send you. You go in there, you can find free books, the ebook. So you're going to click on that, and then they're going to ask you, you need to use your school address. You can look at the title. You can write at night, physical geography. You can put that, or if you find the IBN, I have it in the syllabus. You can put it in there, and it send you the book. Again, do it with your school address, and they're going to give you access to the textbook, digital. And I think it's for about 5 months or so, or until May.
That's good.
Anyway, okay. Have a good one, you guys. Stay safe.
You too. Take care, teacher. Thank you.
Thank you.
For sure on the second, probably be another digital one, all right? Stay safe, you guys. Take care of each other.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Let me finish this.